Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Listen, let's do something fun and different. This time, I'm going to show you how I made this Hot Wheels birthday cake. Now, most of this is edible, but there are a few non-edible elements, and I will explain those to you as we go. I do prefer to do edible anywhere I possibly can, but sometimes there are times when we just cannot. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is level our cakes. This was a 3-layered, this is our dark chocolate cake that we use at the bakery, and it's absolutely delicious. I'm sorry I can't give you the recipe. This one is not mine, but any cake will do. And I'm using a dammed buttercream around the outside. What that is basically just thickened buttercream. You get that by adding a little bit of extra powdered sugar, maybe 1 cup of powdered sugar for every 2 to 3 cups of buttercream, and that will keep your filling from sneaking out the edges. Now we're just going to stack each tier or each layer, and that top layer of cake I turn upside down so that you have a flat top. I was going to say a flat bottom, but you're using the bottom of the top layer as the top of your cake so that it is flat and you're not dealing with a dome. And once we get that crumb coat on there, we're just going to pop it into the refrigerator while we make some of our decorations. For these decorations, I'm using fondant. I did add some Tylose to the fondant to help it dry faster and firmer. You can use some gum paste. I'm sorry, lost what I was saying there. You can use gum paste if you'd like to, but sometimes that can get a little bit more expensive, a little bit more pricey, especially when you're doing a lot of toppers and a lot of decorations. So if you add some Tylose, that will basically do the same thing for you. Now, to make this number 3, I wanted it to be 2 colors. I wanted it to have the red and the orange. So I cut out the 3 with my number 3 cookie cutter, attach it to the red with just some piping gel or water, whatever you prefer. Even shortening works pretty well too. And just kind of trace out a little bit of a thicker outline of the 3 with the red. Now I showed you that I'm doing the letters a little thicker because I wanted them to kind of stand up a little bit. I didn't want them to be completely flush with the top of the cake. I like the dimension a little bit better. And for the flames and the logo, we did just go ahead and print those out on edible paper. Now, if you are worried about copyright, which honestly we all should be, correct? You could go ahead and just kind of make your Hot Wheels logo similar, but not the same. You would have to probably go ahead and just cut it out of fondant is what you would probably have to do. This was not my judgment call, so don't come for me or my boss. So we just cut out our edible images, and then we're just adding some piping gel on the back to get it to stick to our fondant. Just the image itself would not be stiff enough to hold the shape. So we're going to need to back it with either fondant with some of the TMC, the Tylose powder, or use, again, the gum paste would work just fine too. And I did color, this is the pre-colored fondant. Another reason to go ahead and use fondant for these is because you're not having to use as much food coloring. The gum paste does not come pre-colored, and that can kind of a little bit change the consistency of it a little bit when you have to use a color that is so deep, like a red or a black or a deep blue or a deep green, any of the deeper colors. And then just cut out around the outside edge with a sharp X-Acto knife. I mean, you can use a dull knife if you want, but it's definitely going to give you a lot more trouble. If your blade is wanting to kind of catch on to your fondant a little bit, go ahead and stick the tip, cover it with a little bit of shortening. That kind of helps it glide through a little bit more. And I decided to go ahead and take off that bottom edge of that circle so that it could lay flat on the cake. And I'm just inserting some toothpicks. You can dip them in the water to get them to stick to your fondant a little bit better, but I don't seem to have a problem with that. So I didn't bother. So I just put it on a piece of foam and let it dry. That foam is going to let it dry faster because you have air circulation going through the bottom. I did let them dry overnight. I made them in the morning, and then before I left for the day, I turned them over so that you get equal drying time, and by the next day, they were ready to be used. I'm just making some squares. kind of like the flag checker pattern is kind of an abstract pattern we're going for here, but it gets you the idea. So I just set those just to the side to dry also. And then we're going to make our cones, our little traffic cones. So I start by cutting out some white fondant in strips. I have a strip cutter that I use. You don't have to. You can just use a ruler and your straight blade. Or just I like to use a clay cutting tool, this tool right here. Sometimes I can do my strips that way because you just get them done a little faster with that versus an X-Acto knife. And to make these cones, you just put it in your palm and you just kind of spin it with you putting more pressure on the outside edges of your hands, so of your palm, so that you get that cone shape. And then just sticking them to the bottom squares with just a little water. And then I put a little water around the bottom edge and wrap the strip around and then cut off the excess. And I made quite a few of these, but I'm just going to show you how I made one, and then just make as many as you want. And then I put a strip around the top also. You don't have to do that strip around the top. That's just, to me, I think it looks more finished. Just a personal choice there. Now we're going to make the track that's going to go down the cake. And this is one of those elements that's not 100% edible. I'm just using a cake board, and I traced out a circle pattern. I used the same plexiglass disc as the size of the cake. And then just kind of put it on another 10-inch, or is that 8-inch? 8-inch foam dummy to kind of gauge where I need to cut off the excess of that circle. And then I just rolled out some black fondant with some Tylose mixed in again, and added some piping gel to the cardboard. And then I just draped the fondant on it. That back piece, this first piece, is you're going to cut it just flush with the cake. And then the back piece, you need to keep it a little wider so that you can tuck it around the edges. And that's actually the top part, I'm sorry, so that your seam is on the bottom. And I'm just using the toothpicks to hold it in place so that it can kind of dry in that position. This was another piece when I was done with it that I left overnight. Then I'm adding just those little dashes of the white fondant for the marks of the center of the road. Now we're going to make our, what are we going to call it, the loop for the top. This is how I figured out how to do it. I'm just using 1/4-inch foam board, like school foam board. Cut it in a strip, and then I'm just using my clay cutter to mark. It's kind of like I'm what's the word? I'm corrugating it kind of so that it has some flexibility and you can bend it. And you guys got to make sure you're not bending them too far to where you kind of bend it and it kind of just goes too far. You know what I'm trying to say? Because you don't want a crease in it. And then I was able to overlap them a little bit, and I'm using these skewers to hold that in place. You want to make sure that you're using at least 1/4-inch foam board to do this. Now we're going to cut out some more strips to cover this up, and we're just attaching it with more piping gel. I'm just brushing it on there. And then this middle piece is a little harder to do, so that's why I roll it up on itself, place it in the middle, and just kind of unwrap it against the inside of there. So yes, there are some bend marks, but you don't really notice it so much once you get the fondant on there. Combination of it adds a little thickness to hide it, and it's black. You're not going to see it as much. And then we're going to do the same thing with a wider strip to cover the outside of it. And I just rolled it on there. I found that's a little easier because when you're dealing with something that is completely covered in fondant and you're doing it all at one time, basically, it's not given enough time to firm up. So you could leave some finger impressions, and you want to make sure you don't do that. If you have the privilege of time, go ahead and do that middle part first, let it dry completely, and then do the outside. And I set that to the side to firm up also. So now we're going to go ahead and frost our cake. I just used, what did I use? I think I just used navy blue. I think, yeah, navy blue to get this blue color. You could use a royal blue also, but it's going to be a little bit brighter. And then once it is firmed up in the freezer for at least 10 minutes, you can go ahead and flip it over so that it's onto the board. That's what I did there. I put a board on the top, flipped it upside down, attached the finished board on the bottom, and flipped it back over again. Since it's chilled and firm, you can do that. And this is our piece of fondant that we're going to wrap around to cover that board. I want the thickness of that board, but I don't want to see the white. I want it to be a little more cohesive, so I covered it up with some more black fondant. And when you roll it out this way, it's really easy to get it around your board, and you're not having to stretch and pull it and get some rips in it. And that is the brainchild of Tracy from Little Cherry Cake Company. Not my idea. She's the one that came up with this, so check her out. And then I attached it on there with just some shortening. I did not use piping gel this time. You don't have to. I like to use shortening when I can. Then I cut the excess off of around the edge. And I'm attaching this to the cake with some toothpicks. Yes, another non-edible thing. Just remember, guys, when you do this, and you just communicate with your customers so that they know what is edible and what is not. You can even send them home with a piece of paper that written out or typed out, printed out on what is edible and what is not. Just to save them the trouble and save yourself the, well, it's a safety measure, really. And then the checkers and the logo I just attached with some buttercream. And that toothpicks that you see in there, don't worry, we're going to hide those. That'll be almost the last thing that we do. No, the very last thing that we do. So just don't look at them for now. And I'm making the checker pattern in a random way so that we're not having to do too many of the squares. Because it's kind of like a Minecraft cake. If you don't have to do all the squares, don't do them. And then I just attached those cars, non-edible again. You can make those 3D if you want to, but for the sake of time and cost for an order at the bakery, they didn't want to pay for that. So they can take those home, and those can be another present for the child also. So everything here is attached with buttercream. And then I added another piece of fondant to tie the arch, the circle, and the roadway together so that it's more cohesive. Added some more of the dashes, the center lines, to kind of hide any seams. And then just arrange your decorations the way you want to. I know there's a little cornstarch on here, but we will get rid of that also. And then I wrapped a red ribbon around the base of the board to add some more cohesiveness, just attached with some double-sided tape. You could use hot glue if you prefer. And then to get rid of the cornstarch, you can do what I'm doing here. You can stick a brush in shortening and brush it off that way, or you can steam it. I didn't want to take the chance of making anything too soft when it comes to the top here, the decoration, so I stuck with brushing on the cornstarch or the shortening. And then we just used a black edible marker to cover up those toothpicks. I told you we were going to cover that up. So here's our final cake. It's a lot of fun to do something a little different this time. I know I had the holidays, and then I do a lot of wedding cakes, but this one was fun and different, and I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something new and got something from it, and we'll catch you on the next one.